What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved stars sits down for what should be a friendly conversation, only to be blindsided by a host who thinks he can say whatever he wants? In just 37 seconds of one shocking comment, Bill Maher would ignite a firestorm that turned his own studio audience against him and ended with Jamie Foxx walking off the set in the middle of a live taping. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how quickly respect can shatter when someone mistakes their platform for permission to insult a guest who came in good faith. Jamie Foxx walked onto that stage with a smile. The audience erupted in applause as he made his way to the guest chair, waving and pointing to familiar faces in the crowd. He'd been on the show before. There was history here, or so everyone thought. The kind of comfortable rapport that makes for great television. Bill Maher stood to greet him, shaking his hand with that signature smirk he's known for, the kind of expression that always seems to suggest he knows something you don't. "Jamie Foxx, everybody," Maher announced as they both took their seats. The applause continued for a few more seconds before dying down. "Good to have you back." "Good to be back, man," Jamie replied, settling into the chair. He looked relaxed, dressed casually but sharp. "Always a good time when I'm here." "Well, we'll see about that," Maher said with a laugh. It got a chuckle from the audience, but there was something in his tone. Something that suggested this wasn't going to be the lighthearted conversation Jamie had expected. The interview started normally enough. They talked about Jamie's latest project, a film where he played a father fighting to protect his family. Jamie spoke passionately about the role, about what it meant to him as a father himself. He talked about his kids, about wanting to create art that meant something. "You know, I think this is some of my best work," Jamie said, leaning forward, "because it came from a real place. When you're a parent, you do anything for your children. Anything." "Very touching," Maher said, but his voice had that edge again, that tone that suggested he was about to pivot. "Speaking of your kids, you've been pretty protective of them over the years, keeping them out of the spotlight." "Yeah, absolutely," Jamie nodded. "They didn't ask for this life. I want them to have as normal a childhood as possible." Right, Maher said, stroking his chin. "But don't you think that's a little hypocritical?" The audience went quiet. Jamie's expression shifted slightly, his smile fading just a touch. "What do you mean?" Jamie asked carefully. "Well, you're in the entertainment business," Maher continued, gesturing broadly. "You make your living being in the public eye, but then you want to shield your kids from it. Isn't that having your cake and eating it too?" Jamie took a breath. You could see him choosing his words carefully. "I don't think wanting privacy for my children is hypocritical. They're kids. They deserve to just be kids." "But you parade them out when it's convenient," Maher shot back. "Award shows, charity events. I've seen the photos." "Those are rare occasions," Jamie said, his voice a little firmer now. "And they're always appropriate settings. Family events. There's a difference between sharing a moment and exploiting your kids." The tension in the room was building. You could feel it. The audience shifted in their seats. This wasn't the fun banter they'd come for. Maher leaned back in his chair, that smirk growing wider. "I just think it's interesting how celebrities want all the perks of fame, but none of the downsides. You can't have it both ways." "I'm not trying to have it both ways," Jamie replied. His jaw was set now, his posture straighter. "I'm trying to protect my family while doing the job I love. That's what any parent would do. Any parent doesn't make $20 million a movie," Maher quipped. The audience let out an uncomfortable murmur. A few people laughed nervously, but most just looked shocked. Jamie stared at Maher for a long moment. "What does my salary have to do with wanting privacy for my kids?" "It has everything to do with it," Maher said, leaning forward now, like he was going in for the kill. "You're in the privilege business. You get paid obscene amounts of money to pretend to be other people. And then you complain when people are interested in your life. It's ridiculous. I'm not complaining, Jamie said, his voice measured, but you could hear the anger creeping in. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Boundaries, Maher repeated, laughing. Is that what we're calling it now? The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. The energy had shifted completely. Jamie answered the next few questions politely, but briefly. Gone was the enthusiasm he'd shown at the start. Maher seemed almost gleeful about it, like he enjoyed watching his guests squirm. Then they started talking about Jamie's music career. He'd recently released some new material, blending different genres in a way that showcased his versatility. You know what I find fascinating, Maher said, interrupting Jamie mid-sentence about his creative process, is how you jump from thing to thing. Acting, music, comedy. It's like you can't commit to just one lane. Jamie paused. I don't see it that way. I see it as being multi-talented and wanting to explore different forms of expression. Or maybe you're just afraid that if you focus on one thing, people will realize you're not that good at it, Maher said with a laugh. The audience gasped. Several people said, ooh, in that way people do when someone crosses a line. Jamie's face hardened. Excuse me? I'm just saying, Maher continued, seemingly oblivious to, or uncaring about the shift in the room. You're good at a lot of things, but are you great at anything? You're a decent actor, a decent singer, a decent comedian, but name one thing you're actually the best at. I won an Academy Award, Jamie said flatly. So did Marisa Tomei, Maher shot back without missing a beat. The audience actually booed at that, not loudly, but audibly. Maher waved them off dismissively. Jamie sat back in his chair, nodding slowly. You could see the gears turning in his head. He was deciding something. You know what, Bill? Jamie said quietly, but his voice carried across the studio. I came here tonight thinking we were going to have a good conversation, talk about my work, have some laughs, but instead, you've spent the last 15 minutes trying to tear me down. I'm just asking questions, Maher protested, but his smile had finally faded. No, Jamie said, shaking his head. You're being disrespectful. There's a difference between tough questions and just being a jerk. Oh, come on, Maher said, laughing nervously now. Don't be so sensitive. Sensitive? Jamie's voice rose slightly. You just insulted my parenting, my career, and compared my Oscar to a punchline. And now you're telling me I'm being sensitive? The audience started clapping. Not everyone, but enough that it was clear whose side they were on. Maher's face reddened. This is my show. I can ask whatever questions I want. And I can choose not to sit here and be disrespected, Jamie said, standing up. He began unhooking his microphone. Wait, what are you doing? Maher asked, standing too. He looked genuinely shocked, like this wasn't how things were supposed to go. I'm leaving, Jamie said simply, pulling the mic pack from his waistband. He set it carefully on the chair. You can't just leave in the middle of the show, Maher sputtered. Watch me, Jamie said. He turned to the audience. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm sorry you had to see this. The audience erupted in applause. People were standing now, cheering for Jamie. Maher looked around, bewildered. Sit down, Jamie. Don't be ridiculous. Jamie turned back to face him. You know what's ridiculous, Bill? You thinking you can treat people however you want just because it's your show? You invited me here as a guest, and you treated me like a punching bag. I don't care how big your platform is. Nobody deserves that. I was just doing my job, Maher insisted, his voice defensive now. Asking hard questions is what I do. There's a difference between hard questions and hard-hearted questions, Jamie said. You weren't trying to get to any truth. You were trying to make yourself look clever at my expense. Maher crossed his arms. So you're going to run away because your feelings got hurt? No, Jamie said calmly. I'm going to walk away because I have enough self-respect to know when I'm not being valued. And I'm not going to sit here and let you continue to disrespect me for your audience's entertainment. He started walking toward the exit. The audience was still clapping, some people shouting words of encouragement. "Jamie, come on," Maher called after him. "Don't do this. We're live." Jamie stopped and turned around one last time. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to spend the interview insulting me." "I didn't insult you," Maher protested. "Yes, you did," several audience members shouted back. Jamie gave a small wave to the crowd and walked off the stage. The applause grew even louder. People were on their feet now, a standing ovation for a guest who had the backbone to walk away. Maher stood there alone on the stage, looking around at his own audience, cheering for someone else. His face was a mixture of anger and confusion. "Well," he said into his microphone, trying to regain control, "I guess we'll go to commercial." But before they could cut away, you could hear the audience still clapping, still cheering, not for the host, but for the man who refused to be diminished. The production assistant rushed onto the stage, trying to figure out what to do next. Maher sat back down in his chair, shaking his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered, though his mic picked it up. "Can't even take a joke." "That wasn't a joke," someone from the audience yelled back. The cameras finally cut, but the damage was done. In the span of one interview, Bill Maher had managed to turn his own audience against him and prove exactly what kind of host he really was. Jamie Foxx, meanwhile, had shown everyone watching what it looks like to have self-respect, to know your worth, to understand that no platform, no matter how big, is worth compromising your dignity. The interview was supposed to run for 3 segments. It barely made it through 1.5. What should have been a promotional opportunity for Jamie's new film became something else entirely. A moment that showed the difference between someone who uses their power to lift others up and someone who uses it to tear them down. Maher had his microphone, he had his stage, he had his audience, but in that moment, he lost the one thing that actually mattered. He lost their respect. Jamie didn't need to stick around for the last word. His exit said everything that needed to be said. When you know who you are, when you're secure in your accomplishments, you don't need to defend yourself against someone whose only goal is to diminish you. You just walk away. The aftermath in the studio was chaos. Producers scrambled to fill the airtime. The audience sat buzzing with energy, everyone talking about what they'd just witnessed. Some people were pulling out their phones, already texting friends about the drama unfolding in real time. Maher's other guests for the evening, who were waiting backstage, suddenly had a very different show to walk into than they'd prepared for. The energy had completely shifted. What was supposed to be a typical night of political banter and celebrity chat had become something else. A referendum on respect, on boundaries, on how we treat each other. But that's what happens when you mistake a platform for power. When you think that having a microphone means you can say whatever you want without consequences. Bill Maher learned that night that audiences are smarter than he gave them credit for. They can tell the difference between provocative questioning and simple meanness, between challenging a guest and bullying them. Jamie Foxx had walked onto that stage as a guest. He walked off as a hero to everyone in that room who'd ever been made to feel small by someone who thought they were bigger. Everyone who'd been talked down to by someone who confused cruelty with cleverness. Everyone who'd been told they were being too sensitive when they stood up for themselves. The beauty of it was in how calm Jamie remained throughout. He never raised his voice beyond a firm tone. He never resorted to insults. He simply stated his case, drew his line, and followed through. That's real strength. Not the kind that comes from having the biggest platform or the loudest voice, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone make you feel lesser. Maher had tried to paint Jamie as someone who wanted special treatment, someone who couldn't handle criticism. But what the audience saw was the opposite. They saw a successful man who didn't need to prove anything to anyone, who had enough confidence in his own worth that he didn't need to sit there and absorb disrespect just to promote a movie. The irony was that Maher probably thought he was being edgy, provocative, doing the kind of tough interview that makes for good television. But there's a difference between being challenging and being cruel, between asking difficult questions and simply trying to make someone squirm. The audience understood that difference even if Maher didn't. In the control room, you can imagine the panic. The director trying to figure out how to salvage the show. The producers wondering if they should try to convince Jamie to come back. The lawyers probably getting involved to figure out the implications of a guest walking off mid-broadcast. But out in the studio, among the audience, there was something else. There was respect. Admiration even. Because they'd just watched someone do what many of them wished they could do in their own lives. Stand up. Draw a line. Walk away from a situation that didn't serve them. That's the thing about moments like these. They resonate because they're about more than just two famous people having an argument. They're about something universal. About dignity. About self-worth. About refusing to be treated poorly, regardless of who's doing the treating, or what they can offer you in return. Jamie had nothing to gain from staying. The interview was already derailed. His movie would get promoted elsewhere. But he had everything to lose by allowing himself to be disrespected on national television. And he understood that. He made the calculation in real time and chose himself. It's the kind of moment that defines people. Not the carefully crafted public personas or the rehearsed talk show answers, but the unrehearsed reactions. The split-second decisions that reveal character. Maher revealed his character too, just not in the way he probably hoped. His comments about Jamie's parenting, his dismissal of Jamie's talent, his reduction of an Oscar-winning performance to a punchline. These weren't the marks of a skilled interviewer. They were the marks of someone who had forgotten, if he ever knew, that being clever isn't the same as being cruel. The audience had come expecting entertainment. They got it, just not the kind Maher had planned. They got to see a real moment of truth, a moment where pretense fell away and people showed who they really were. And when the cameras started rolling again after the commercial break, when Maher had to address what had just happened, you could see it in his face. The realization that he'd miscalculated, that his own audience, the people who came to see his show, had sided with his guest over him. That's a hard lesson to learn in front of millions of people. But perhaps it's the kind of lesson that can only be learned that way. In the bright lights, in the moment, with no chance to edit or revise or soften the blow. Jamie Foxx walked off that stage and into a different kind of spotlight. The kind reserved for people who stand up for themselves, who refuse to be diminished, who understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply leave. And Bill Maher was left sitting in his chair, holding his microphone, realizing too late that having a platform doesn't mean people have to listen. That respect has to be earned, not demanded. That treating people well isn't political correctness or sensitivity. It's just being a decent human being. The whole thing probably lasted 20 minutes from start to finish. But those 20 minutes said more about both men than hours of carefully managed interviews ever could. They showed us who rises above and who tries to tear down, who builds up and who diminishes, who understands their worth and who needs to prove it by making others feel worthless. In the end, Jamie Foxx didn't need the last word. His actions spoke louder than any comeback could have. He simply refused to participate in his own diminishment. And in doing so, he gave everyone watching permission to do the same in their own lives. Because that's what these moments really teach us. Not about celebrity drama or television controversy, but about boundaries, about self-respect, about understanding that no opportunity is worth compromising your dignity. No platform is worth accepting disrespect. No audience is worth performing your own humiliation. Jamie walked away that night with his head held high. his reputation intact, his self-respect uncompromised. He lost nothing and gained the admiration of everyone who witnessed it. Bill Maher, sitting alone on his stage, learned a harder lesson: that you can have all the power in the room and still end up on the wrong side of history. That your own audience will turn on you if you give them reason to. That being the host doesn't make you untouchable. 20 minutes. That's all it took for everything to change. For a routine interview to become a defining moment. For a guest to become a hero, and a host to reveal himself as something far less admirable. What happens when respect runs out? When patience reaches its limit? When someone finally says enough? In just 37 seconds of one shocking comment, we found out. And the answer was clear. The person who walks away with dignity will always command more respect than the person who stays to throw punches. Jamie Foxx knew that, and that's why he's the one everyone remembers as the winner of an interview he never finished.